Good morning, everyone. I welcome you to all to the fifth day of the workshop on research methodology on ethnographic study. Myself, Parbin Iraqi. Today we have with us Dr. Meghna Choudhury, Assistant Professor of the Department of Folklore Research, Gauhati University. Before starting the session, I would like to give a brief introduction of Ma'am. Ma'am has done her master's in geology as well as in mass communication and journalism from Gauhati University. She has done her PhD from the Department of Folklore Research of Gauhati University in the year 2022. She has also done PG diploma in translation studies as well as folklore and cultural studies. So, regarding the professional experience, ma'am has served as a junior information and public officer in the Directorate of Information and Public Relations from 2013 to 2022. She is the recipient of many awards and prizes like Child Scientist Awards, Best Debater Award in Inter-College Festival, awards in different discipline of music and symposia representing Guwahati in zonal and national level inter-university youth festival organized by Indian universities. May has also completed research project as principal investigator on the topic a study of folk musical traditions of the Rabha tribe of Gwalpara district in Assam and their role in social communication. She has also written books like The Journey of an Assamese Entrepreneur, Lokhesar Borthakur, and সাধুকথাৰ চম্পাৱতী আৰু এখন সাগৰ. Ma'am has also authored a social novel titled Nizgori, which has received Judges Award. So, with this brief introduction, I welcome you, ma'am, and request you to kindly start the session. Over to you, ma'am. And there is a request. I request all participants to on their video. Thank you.
A very good morning to all of you present here. And first of all, I would like to extend my gratitude to IQAC Cell Bahana College and the associate organization which has come forward and organized such an important workshop. And I hope that the last few days, which all of you have joined in this ethnography workshop, had been very fruitful. Uh, I would like to know initially, am I audible to all of you?
Yes, ma'am, you are audible.
Okay. So, if an online workshop becomes just like a classroom workshop, and if you can go on for one-on-one interaction, then it is beneficial both to the speaker and the listeners. So, I would like to request the participants to kindly switch on their videos, because if I cannot look into your faces, then it becomes really, it's like a one-way traffic that I'm speaking, but I don't know in front of whom I'm speaking. Uh, so, thank you for joining this session with me. The topic of my session, which has been assigned, is special topics in ethnography. I think I'm missing the PowerPoint presentation.
Just a minute, ma'am.
So, since this workshop has been based on ethnography, and many other speakers during the last few days have already spoken about different aspects of ethnography, So I would not go deeply into defining anthropology or defining other aspects. But yes, can I have the presentation, please?
Yes, madam.
I hope people from different fields have joined in this workshop. And ethnography is such a field where, you know, it is relevant to many fields, actually many subjects, not only anthropology but also sociology, sociological sciences, folklore studies, media studies, mass communication, whatever it is. We need to go for ethnography in some point or the other to, to give a concrete form to our research, to give a concrete form to our thoughts. Next slide, please. So let us go from the very beginning, very briefly. Anthropology is uh, basically the study of the origin and development of human societies and cultures. By culture, we mean the learned behavior of people, including their languages, their belief systems, their social structures, institutions, and material goods. And since I am from the background of folklore, it would be essential for me to highlight that ethnography is a field which is very, very essential and very, very crucial in folkloric studies, because since folklore includes oral literature, material culture, social folk customs, and folk performing arts, in whatever field we do our research, whether it is collecting of oral literature, for example, suppose we are going to collect the myths, tales, or legends of a particular community. Supposedly, we are going to collect the material culture, which includes every material thing which a community uses in its day to day life. Supposedly, we are going for a survey work in which we want to define the social folk customs of a community. Suppose we want to document on any form of folk performing arts of in any corner of the world, we need to go for ethnography, which really needs participant observation or fieldwork. Next slide, please. So what happens uh, in anthropology? Individual anthropologists, they tend to specialize in one of the four fields. These are physical anthropology, archaeology, linguistic anthropology, and cultural anthropology. I would not go very much deeper, but just an insight to these four kinds of specialized fields of anthropology. Physical anthropology is also called biological anthropology. It is the systematic study of humans as biological organisms. Traditionally, biological anthropology is concentrated.
Hello, ma'am. Hello, ma'am. Your
Am I audible?
You are audible. Yes, audible.
Okay, I'm so sorry. My Wi-Fi got disconnected because there is a load shedding. Uh,
Okay.
I was speaking about physical anthropology. So, studies of human adaptation mainly, it focuses on the capacity of humans to adapt or to adjust to their material environment biologically and culturally. Can I have the presentation, please? So next we come to the next specialized field of anthropology, which is called archaeology. Archaeology is a field of anthropology that basically studies human cultures through the recovery and analysis of material remains and environmental data, basically. Sorry, I cannot view the PPT.
Yes, yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Next slide. Okay. Now, the third field was linguistic anthropology. This field of anthropology that studies human languages is called linguistic anthropology. Linguists, they may deal with the description of a language, the history of the language, or with language in relation to social and cultural contexts. Now, slowly we are moving to the field of ethnography through cultural anthropology. Cultural anthropology, which is also called social or socio-cultural anthropology, it is the study of customary patterns in human behavior, thought, and feelings. It focuses on humans as culture producing and culture reproducing creatures. Now, how do we define culture? As I have already defined it, a society is shared and socially transmitted ideas, values, and perceptions, which are used to make sense of experience and which generate behavior and are reflected in that behavior. Now, cultural anthropology basically has two main components. One of them is ethnography, very, very important, and the other one is ethnology. So, what is the difference between these two fields? Ethnography is basically it is a detailed description of a particular culture, primarily based on fieldwork. It is the term anthropologists used for on-location research because the hallmark of ethnographic fieldwork is a it is a combination of social participation and personal observation within the community where you are doing the study, as well as you need to do interviews and discussions with individual members of the community of the group. The ethnographic method is commonly referred to as participant observation because we need to move to the field, we need to observe the community from within. That is why participant observation and fieldwork are very, very distinctive and special features of ethnography. Uh, Through fieldwork, what do the social anthropologists seek, or the folklorist, or the mass communicator seek? She or he seeks a detailed and intimate understanding of the context of social action and relations. Next slide, please. So, ethnographers provide the information which is used to make systematic comparisons among cultures all across the globe. Such cross-cultural research is called ethnology. So I was defining the difference between ethnography and ethnology. When we are doing a cross-cultural kind of a research, then we can term it as ethnology. Ethnology allows the anthropologists or the researchers to develop theories from their field experiences, and these theories in turn help in explaining why certain important differences or certain important similarities exist between different communities residing in different parts of the world. So here is an old photograph of mine. I am standing with a group of Rabha folk dancers. So I was in an ethnographic project. Uh, I was documenting Rabha traditions, and here are the girls. So what I did, I literally lived in with them. I literally observed what they do, how they live, how they behave, how they feel, what are their customary laws, and through this kind of a process, I was trying to do uh, a proper ethnographic documentation of the selected Rava villages for my project. In the next slide, we move on to a video. Please double click it, it will play.
Okay, ma'am. Give me 2 seconds, ma'am.
If you double click it, then I think the video will play. Rima, can I try to present uh, present it from my machine?
Yes, ma'am. You can.
Okay, just a minute. Uh,
Okay, ma'am.
I'm not being able to present. Should you consider me as a host before I can present? Is there any technicality regarding that? Rima, is there any technicality regarding that?
Wait a minute, ma'am. Wait, we are trying to solve this problem. Ma'am, you can share the slides.
So, are you viewing this?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. It is visible.
My slide is visible. Okay.
Yes.
actually this was, uh, um, a Rabha ritual of you know running over the fire, and the next visual was women were pouring liquor on the mouth of the men. So this was a part of my project actually. I was documenting Rabha culture in different pockets of Gwalpara district. So, since I'm going to speak about special topics related to ethnography, therefore, in this video, you can see an aspect that I was actually documenting the culture through, uh, you know, uh, through the audio visual media. I was using my microphone, I was using my camera in order to document it. So nowadays, what happens? Ethnographers not only take notes of certain things in their diary, but they employ the gifts of technology, the gifts of new age media and scientific inventions in documenting whatever they see in the field. But does ethnography consist only the field related materials? Is ethnography only supposed to be field work, and do ethnographers and field workers are do they only need to stay in a remote village or remote island in order to document in order to document the things in a proper ethnographic way? The answer is a clear no, because ethnography and ethnographic research is since it is a vital component of many fields, not only anthropology but also my field, which is folklore, and also media studies and mass communication, and in different other fields also. Since ethnography is very very essential, so now we will go deeper inside the special topics of ethnography and try to find out how ethnography has been viewed by researchers and scholars worldwide, and how this is much more than only field work and staying in an island or staying inside a remote village. So let us move to the next slide. First of all, we would like to discuss about salvage ethnography. Now, what is the meaning of salvage? Actually, the meaning of salvage is to rescue or save, especially from wreckage or ruin. Here in this picture, we can see Malinowski, known as the father of ethnography, with Trobriand Islanders. It was in the year 1918. After that, he finished his famous book on the Trobriand Islanders. I hope you all are aware of that book. So, what happens in salvage ethnography? We know that in the disturbing and often violent historical context of expansion and domination by European and other powerful political states and commercial enterprises, what happened? The survival of thousands of traditional communities worldwide has been at stake. Many of these threatened people have become physically extinct. Others who have survived, they could not hold on to their territories or were focused to give up their way of life. Although anthropologists have seldom been able to prevent such tragic events, they did try to make a record of these cultural groups because they were dying, they were diminishing, they were being extinct. Uh, the anthropologists, they did try to record what existed inside those cultural groups. And this is an important anthropological practice. This practice is used for documenting endangered culture. And since the anthropologists try to rescue or save the groups from wreckage or ruin, this kind of ethnography was termed as salvage ethnography, and which is also known as urgent anthropology. So, what was done in urgent anthropology? What what type of things were documented by the field workers? They documented cultural artifacts and other material remains, including skulls, bones, utensils, uh, weapons of the communities, their clothing, their ceremonial objects, their vocabularies, their myths, their song, speech, music, dance. their social practices, their belief system, their customary laws, whatever folkloric material came in front of them, they grabbed it. They, they tried to document it so that they can save a community or a race from dying from the earth. After salvage ethnography, we come to acculturation. Now, what is acculturation? It is basically a process in which an individual adopts, acquires, and adjusts to a new cultural environment. Why? As a result of being placed into a new culture, or when another culture is brought to someone. So, what happens? Typically, as the dominant power or the often foreign power, supposedly we are speaking about the European colonies which existed throughout the world. What happens as the dominant power establishes its superiority? The local indigenous cultures are made to appear inferior. They are ridiculed by the dominant culture, or otherwise, they think that this culture is not worth preserving. So, what is done? The um, indigenous cultures are often forced to adopt the ways of the dominant society, pressing in on them. So, anthropologists and ethnographers throughout the world have come forward for acculturation studies so that, just like salvage ethnography, so that they can save a dying community or a dying culture or a dying tradition from the verge of extinction. Now we move on to applied anthropology. So, the use of anthropological knowledge and methods um, should not remain confined to a book, a diary, or a lab. This knowledge and this method should be used to solve problems which are uh, concerned with communities throughout the world. And since communities are confronting newer challenges, so we need to apply our ethnographic findings. This is what we call applied anthropology. We apply it in problem solving. We apply it to meet newer challenges. So here I would like to cite an example how applied anthropology or how ethnographers work in the field of applied anthropology. So what happened in 1937? The British government set up an anthropological research institute in present-day Zambia. So this research institute was established to study the impact of international markets on Central Africa's traditional societies. In the next decade, anthropologists work on a number of problem oriented studies throughout Africa, uh, including the disruptive effects of the mining industry and labor migration on domestic economies and culture. Supposedly, we come to the Indian context, leaving apart the American, the European, and the African context. We have observed in our day-to-day life also that what happens, this growing market economy is gradually covering up the traditional markets, the traditional cultures. So in order to find out the ways in which we can take our traditional market, we can take our traditional economy and culture to a secure place, or we can take it to the world market, we have to apply ethnographic study. We need to study what are the lacunae, what are the loopholes in the entire system. Supposedly, we are speaking about the market economy or the trade of material culture. Suppose in many parts of India we find cottage industries. In order to rescue those cottage industries or those small scale industries, the first and foremost thing what we should do is to go for applied anthropology. How? Through ethnographic study. And nowadays, it is a matter of happiness that a large number of professionally trained anthropologists specialized in applied research are working worldwide in both government and non-government sectors. So that is about applied anthropology. Now, do anthropologists Anthropologists, or more particularly, do ethnographers only go to the field, collect something, bring it to the agency or organization in which she or he is employed, and finish? The work is done. No, the ethnographer's work does not finish there, because we have seen in different places that ethnographers have involved themselves in the study of culture changes and also in the study of conflict. So, what do? They go forward with the concept of advocacy anthropology. So, advocacy anthropology. Here is a picture of the ethnic violence which happened in Assam's Bodoland a few years back. So, what happens? Anthropological research involves conflict studies also. Not only they do, the ethnographers study the day-to-day custom and tradition, but they also study the challenges met by the communities. So, in studying about conflict, they need to involve immigrants, they need to involve refugees, they need to involve people who have to study inside detention camps. So, what happens? Some ethnographers have gone beyond studying such groups to playing a crucial role or playing a key role in helping them to adjust to their new circumstances. Because um, sometimes what happens after a conflict, a large group of people, large number of villages, or an entire community has to move from one place to another. They need to leave their native village, native place. So ethnographers, what they do, uh, they apply their ethnographic knowledge or anthropological knowledge or folkloric knowledge in helping these communities, in helping these immigrants and refugees to adjust into their new environment. So this is clearly an example of applied anthropology. And some ethnographers have become advocates for peasant communities. They have been advocating for religious minorities, ethnic minorities, or indigenous groups struggling to hold on to their ancestral lands, their natural resources, and their customary ways of life. So, this kind of advocacy anthropology can also be a special topic of ethnographic study. Peasant studies. So, peasantry it actually represents the largest social category of our species so far. Peasants stand midway between modern industrial society and traditional foragers, herders, and fishers. Because peasant unrest over economic and social problems fuels political instability in many developing countries. Therefore, anthropological studies of these rural populations around the world are considered quite significant. And peasant studies can be one of those special fields of ethnographic studies in which an ethnographer can play a very important, a very crucial role in taking the problems of the peasants residing in a remote corner of the world to the organizations involving a group of countries, so that the world can understand their problems. Because the problem of peasants is that either neither they can leave their plot of land, neither they can leave their age old traditional profession, neither they can move to a nearby town or a nearby urban neighborhood or a nearby city in search of livelihood. Neither they can sustain themselves by working as fishermen or by going inside the forest for foraging or hunting or gathering. They need to be in touch with the plot of land. They need to plow. They need to, you know, grow food. So, since they need to grow food for us, so we need to focus on peasant studies as an important part of ethnography, so that the problems and concerns of the peasant community or the peasantry can come in front of the entire world. Now, um, since I had already mentioned a few minutes back that ethnography nowadays, or since ancient time also, it did not only encompass studying a community by residing inside the community or by residing inside a village or in an island or in a forest. What ethnography does is that ethnographic study can be done from a distance also. How and why? Uh, in doing this, first of all, let me cite the example of Second World War. So, what happened during Second World War? It so happened that aiming to discover basic personality traits or psychological profiles shared by the majority of the people in modern state societies, several US and British anthropologists became involved in a wartime government program of national character studies. So, what is national character study during wartime? Basically, when a war happens, then one country or one group needs to study the national character of its enemy country or its enemy group. How do they study this national character? This kind of wartime study will not be possible by sending ethnographers for on location fieldwork. It would be impossible. So, what happened during the Second World War? Uh, Ethnographers like Mead and Ruth Benedict and some others, they developed some innovative techniques in order to study cultures which were located at a distance. How did they do it? They collected newspapers from another country, I mean the enemy country. They collected literature from that country. They collected photographs. They collected popular films. They also, performed structured interviews with immigrants and refugees from the enemy nations and also foreigners from other countries. Through this, what happens? What happened? They could form a, uh, a psychological profile of the people residing in the in the enemy country. So, this kind of a study is called studying cultures at a distance, studying from a distance. What to study? The national character of a country. So, such studies were believed to be significant in order to better understand and deal with the newly declared enemy states, Japan and Germany. And when the Cold War happened, this the same technique was used by US against Russia. So this kind of ethnographic fieldwork from a distance is known as studying cultures at a distance, and the process is called national character study to find out how find out the perception of an enemy country towards one's own country, and to find out ways of dealing with immigrants and refugees from the enemy nation. So that is studying from a distance. Now, if I miss ethnomusicology, then ethnographic study or a talk about ethnographic study cannot be complete. I hope all of you are aware of this term ethnomusicology, yet I would like to define it as a study of music from the cultural and social aspects of the people who make it. Uh, Ethnomusicology encompasses distinct theoretical and methodical approaches that emphasize cultural, social, material, cognitive, biological, and other dimensions or contexts of musical behavior, in addition to the sound component. And uh, within musical ethnography, it is the first hand personal study of musicking, as known as the act of taking part in a musical performance. So, folklorists and anthropologists who began preserving and studying folklore music in Europe and the United States in the 19th century are considered the precursors of the field prior to the Second World War. Now, let me narrow it down to the Indian context, or let me narrow it down to uh, some tribal group. For example, the Missings of Northeast India, or particularly Assam, the Missing tribe. When we go for an ethnomusicological study to the Missing tribe, we can find that the number 5 has great significance in the music of the Missing tribe. So, what happens when we go deeper inside the ethnographic study of the tribe? We understand that this number 5 is not only important in terms of music, but also important in terms of their uh, religious worshipping, in terms of their house construction. In many ways, the number 5 arrives in some way or the other, in some form or the other. So, what happens when we go for ethnomusicological study? Then it opens, a host of window in front of us, host of window, because ethnomusicological study is something which has been utilized by ethnographers in order to understand the psyche of a particular community or a particular tribe. Because when we study only the lyrics of folk songs or tales or folk poetry, we undoubtedly we have an understanding of how that tribe is, how that tribe is behaving towards another tribe, or what kind of a psychological makeup they are carrying from their ancestors. But ethnomusicology is particularly the study of music from the cultural and the social aspects of the people who actually create that music. So, if we observe the uh, tribes of Africa who reside in forests, then we can observe that uh, playing drums in a in a loud voice or in a noisy character forms a typical characteristic of those African tribes. Why? Why did it happen so? Because uh, from ages they have been residing inside forests, so they are having a life with the wild animals. So if they need to sustain themselves inside the forest, then they need to move away those wild animals. So naturally they used fire or some other equipments to save themselves from those wild animals. But this form of playing drums in a loud noisy, loud noisy tone, this also is help them. This method has also helped them in tackling with the problems of wild animals and living a life peacefully. Now, if you observe cowherd boy, a cowherd boy in India who has taken his cowherd to a grassland, and it is you know it is afternoon time. Uh, Everybody in the village is having a good nap, but the cowherd boy is there. He's looking after his herd of cows. What is the instrument which the cowherd boy would play? The instrument is undoubtedly the flute. He plays the flute. Why flute? Because he is working and he needs to calm himself from the scorching heat, from the troubles of his life. He needs to calm himself from everything bad or everything strugglesome happening um, in his life. So, what he does, he takes the help of that sweet instrument or instrument with sweet notations, which is flute, and he plays the flute. This is how ethnomusicological study helps us in behavioral study of a community and in finding the psychological pattern which the community has been following through ages. Uh, Now we come to another special topic of ethnography, which is termed as studying up. So, Ethnography's mission is to gain a more comprehensive understanding of the human condition in its full cross cultural range and complexity, not just in distant places or at the margins of our own societies. Hence, some scholars have urged ethnographic research in the centers of political and economic power in the world's dominant societies. So, what happens? Since I have already mentioned about national character study, that is, we can do ethnographic study from a distance. We can even do ethnographic study from one nation to another. So, some scholars have urged ethnographic research in the centers of political and economic power in the world's dominant societies. So, US anthropologist Laura Nader has coined the term study up. And this study up method of ethnographic research, it focuses on Western elites, government bureaucracies, global corporations, philanthropic foundations, media empires, business clubs, and whatnot. So, this kind of study in which we involve the bureaucratic system, in which we involve the corporations working worldwide, in which we involve foundations which declare themselves to be philanthropic in nature, in which we involve big media giants, big media companies, which are group of companies having television channels, cinema theaters, uh, newspapers, and many other digital modes of communication. A study of all this has been termed by Laura Nader as study up. And she has also explained that studying up this studying up mode of ethnographic research is very important in the present world in order to study what is happening, how it is happening, and why it is happening throughout the world. Now we come to globalization and multi-sited ethnography. So here is a picture which speaks about the global scapes. You can see here are five scapes. One of them is ethnoscape, then there is ideoscapes, mediascapes, technoscapes, fiancescapes. Now, we will consider ourselves to ethnoscapes because we are considering the multi-sited ethnography aspect. So, the investigation and documentation of peoples and cultures embedded in the larger structures of a globalizing world, utilizing a range of methods in various locations of time and space. Also, emerging in multi-sided ethnography are greater interdisciplinary approaches to fieldwork, bringing in theoretical ideas and research methods from cultural studies, media studies, as well as mass communication. So, what happens in multi-sided ethnography? These ethnoscapes are working. For example, nowadays people are leaving their native land and moving to other places for work in search of livelihood. But they are being attached to their friends and family through the media, through the telecommunication system, through social media platforms and whatnot. So, what are the social media platforms basically? They are virtual or digital communities. So, ethnographers and have termed this to be an important component of globalization because the world has become a village now. It is a global village. So uh, we can go from we can go forward for multi-sided ethnography with the help of this new technologies or new media. An Indian anthropologist or a famous ethnographer Appadurai, he had coined this term ethnoscape in order to define the spaces created by virtual technologies in the virtual world, in the cloud. So we are connected with each other. And in the post-COVID world, these ethnoscapes or the importance of the ethnoscapes have been growing every day because people are so lonely now. People are, they are always moving through a mode of, stress, whether it is stress in his or her profession, or whether it is stress at some relationship level, or in any kind of aspect. But stress is now a day to day component of our lives. So, in order to deal with that stress factor, what do? We go to the social media platforms and we utilize our ethnoscape to relieve ourselves. We watch videos, we go through the posts, even we enjoy memes on social media. So, what is this all about? These are all ethnoscapes on the cloud. So, we can study this ethnoscape through the process of multi-sided ethnography. Now, ethnography and telecommunication. I will just cite an example. Example of satellite instructional television experiment or SITE. What was that? It was an experimental satellite communications project which was launched in India in 1975, designed jointly by NASA and the Indian Space Research Organization. The project made available informational television programs to rural India. The main objectives of the experiment were to educate the financially backward and academically illiterate people of India on various issues via satellite broadcasting, and also to help India gain technical experience in the field of satellite communications. So, this is an example of how telecommunication has taken the help of ethnographic study in designing a large, you know, project like the satellite instructional television experiment. So whenever a government decides to launch a policy or launch a scheme, what is the first thing the government does? The government has to take into consideration the ethnography of the people, ethnography of, the people who will be benefited, or the target people of that scheme or of that project. Similarly, in telecommunication also, whenever a program is designed, whether it is designed for education or whether it is designed for uh, entertainment or whether it is designed for information, the baseline is that ethnographic study has to be done to find out the needs and the challenges faced by the community, uh, to which that telecommunication project is targeting itself. Only then an television experiment or a government project or a scheme or a telecommunication big project of telecommunication can be successful, because without understanding the ethnography of the community or ethnography of a larger region or a country or supposedly a group of countries, a project cannot be designed properly, because the inputs will not be, inputs cannot be put together in a proper way. There has to be ethnography in the first and foremost place. Now we move on to some more areas of ethnography. uh, we know that ethnography is related to cinema as well. We will move to, in the last part of my presentation, we will move to a visual. So uh, I will talk about that after the visual. Uh, there is also a category of cinema which is called the ethnographic film. So actually, some people define it as uh, a film or a project lying just middle way between an ethnographic study and a documentary film, that is ethnographic film. So what happens is that in an ethnographic film, the filmmaker tries to project the folkloric traditions or the folkloric ways of life of a particular community, or not only of the folkloric way of life of a rural community, but also an ethnographic film can be filmed in an urban atmosphere. And nowadays, if you search the net, you will find terminologies such as cyber ethnography or online ethnography. So I have already spoken about, this globalization and multi-sided ethnography. So this cyber ethnography and online ethnography are related to that globalization aspect or multi-sided ethnography. And in order to find, the psychological behavioral instincts of uh, a kind of people, supposedly we are going for a psychological study of youngsters, or how do they look into their life, how do they feel about themselves, or what do they dream about the future of the country or the future of the world. We need to go through cyber ethnography or through online ethnography to reach the new generation, because the new generation resides in this ethnoscapes. And then, how can we forget artificial intelligence? In artificial intelligence, what happens? Supposedly, I was a few months back, I was going to IIT Guwahati for some work, and I met a research scholar who is, working with his supervisor in the Department of Design there. So, what his study was all about is that I'll just give a brief gist. The thing was that uh, the thing was that he told me
Nova Mane.
that through
Alaska.
artificial
No
intelligence,
Ruivo dig the Pola Titi and then Patai my
he employed
No, no Ruivo the
artificial intelligence
Kilung
at home.
Malapano.
Nowadays, what happens?
Hello, Mr.
Supposedly,
Dhrubapadi.
Dilona.
Please off your mic.
Sir, morning work that no Gary the Titi
so
and then
in
at the
artificial
very man.
intelligence, we can use Alexa. We can, order Alexa that Alexa
Oh,
switch off the lights. Alexa, switch off my fan, or Alexa, please open my curtains, or Alexa, please close my curtains. So what is this? What is Alexa actually? She is, or particularly it is, you know, a product of artificial intelligence. So that student from IIT Guwahati, he told me that nowadays in India, artificial intelligence is being employed by people in order to look into their homes, whether their home is safe or not. Supposedly, I am driving and I look inside my home and I see that somebody has left all the lights and fans on, and the door has been locked by somebody. So what do I do? I will, I will instruct my artificial intelligence gadget, which has been placed inside my living room, in order to, follow my instructions. But in the Indian context, what is actually necessary? Supposedly, we leave our, parents at home, and we move to some other place or to some other town or city for work. Slowly, what happens? We also age, and our parents also age. And supposedly, a mother is living all alone in a village, and she's doing all her chores, daily chores herself. And suddenly, on a rainy day, what happened? She was working outside, uh, and near the well, it was slippery, and the mother fell down. And the daughter or the son, he or she is residing far away. They are working in some city, for example, Guwahati. So, what is the need of artificial intelligence in Indian context? That gadget should inform quickly that your mother is in danger. She has slipped herself. She has fallen down. Please call somebody to help her. Or your father is still sleeping. He has not waken up in the morning. It is time for his medicine. So we need such a gadget which would help my mother if she falls down, or the gadget which would help my father if he forgets to take his medicine. So that IIT Guwahati boy, he told me that artificial intelligence can be used to design things which are more Indian in nature, rather than just instructing to switch off the fan or switch on a gadget or just opening and closing of curtains of a room. So, what will be the necessity of such an artificial intelligence project? To study the ethnography of the people. We again come back to the ethnographic aspect, because without studying the ethnographic aspect of people, we cannot we will not be able to find out that what is the need of the parents who stay far away from their children in the villages or in small towns. Only after studying what our parents need or what people of old age need, that only after we finish that ethnographic study, then only we can go for designing an artificial intelligence gadget which will help our parents who are staying far away from us. So in artificial intelligence also, ethnography is playing and will continue playing an important role. And what is happening is that uh, big companies like Xerox, like Intel, they are also in fact utilizing the aspect of ethnography in designing their products, because Intel, when it designed that small kind of that MacBook kind of thing, which can be carried, by in by even by small children also in their hands. What did they do? They did an ethnographic study to find out among school children and young adults that how do they hold their copies and pens, how do they feel comfortable. They saw that instead of carrying a big bag, young adults and children, they love carrying a small diary or a small copy in their hands. So what they did, after that ethnographic study, Intel designed that small machine which can be carried in a hand, which is handy, which is lightweight. So the big companies are also employing these special aspects of ethnography in order to design their products. And before I conclude, let us move to a beautiful uh, video. Let us move to a beautiful video. আমি দেবিকা আর এ আমার হাজবেন্ড মিস্টার চ্যাটার্জি এ काम करता है नॉर्वे में ये मेरा दोनों बच्चा लोग हैं शो और शुचि छोटी छोटी खुशियाँ चुनो ओ शुभ शुभ हम अपना प्यारा कोलकाता छोड़ के नॉर्वे में अपना नया दुनिया बनाया और उस दिन इन लोगों ने हमारा दुनिया छीन लिया वेलफेयर ने ये पाया है कि आप अपने बच्चों की देखभाल सही से नहीं कर पा रहे व्हाट आपके बच्चों की कस्टडी अब हमारे पास है क्या मेरा बच्चा ब्रेस्ट फीडिंग पे है प्लीज प्लीज मेरा बच्चा वापस दे दो Wilfred has picked up the children without informing the parents. This couple here have been investigated for 10 weeks. Cultural differences को लेके इन्होंने तो केस बना दिया आपने बच्चों को हाथ से खाना खिलाते हो साथ सुलाते हो माथे पे टीके लगाते हो इनका तो ये कहना है कि Mrs. Chatterjee has an unstable mind. This court rejects Mrs. Chatterjee's petition. No. Both children will be wards of the state till they are 18 years old. बच्चों की आड़ में बिजनेस चला रहे हैं ये लोग जितने बच्चे ये फॉस्टर सिस्टम में डालते हैं ना उतने ही पैसे मिलते हैं सबको दोनों बच्चा चाहिए तुम्हें कोई आइडिया भी है इस मैटर से मेरे सिटीजनशिप एप्लीकेशन पे क्या असर पड़ेगा तुम्हें तुम्हारे सिटीजनशिप से अलावा और कुछ दिखता है क्या मैं जानू मैं रूह या रूह में जान I don't need my children sir I die sir without my children I die ये फैमिली मैटर नहीं ये देश का मैटर है इनको लगता है कि हमारा एकानी देश है इट्स नो कल्चर जिस जगह हमको न्याय मिलेगा दुनिया का कोई भी जगह वहां जाके हम लड़ूंगा पूछो ये माँ के दिल से देविका जी आप कुछ कहना चाहेंगे हम अच्छा माँ है बुरा माँ है पता नहीं पर माँ हूँ सर that was a small clip from a recently released movie, Mrs. Chatterjee versus Norway. So I think you did hear a few dialogues from the film, which were like, बच्चे को अपने हाथों से खाना खिलाते हैं, साथ सुलाते हैं और टीका लगाते हैं. So what are these? These are parts of Indian culture or the things done by every Indian mother in an Indian society. So, when Mrs. Chatterjee moved to Norway, she could not leave her customs and traditions behind in India, and she took all those things with her all the way to Norway. And when she became a mother in Norway, then she used to feed her children with her hands. She used to put a black mark to avoid that buri nazar from her children. And as every Indian mother does, or as every Indian parent does, she used to sleep with both her children. And she was a breastfeeding mother when the authorities took both her children away, claiming that she was not a good mother because feeding children with one's own hands or making them sleep with the mother or the parents and putting a black mark on their forehead was against the culture of Norway. So this is a cultural clash, and this film actually depicts the relationship of ethnography with cinema, because uh, Rani Mukherjee, in a scene, he is seen to say this dialogue that ये देश का matter है. So when it becomes a desh ka matter, then certainly there is a clash of cultures of two countries. And the mother finally, what happens? She wins, and she has to find a long legal battle to bring her children back to her. So what happens is that this kind of ethnographic clash has been troubling immigrants, refugees, and people who cross borders in search of livelihood or in search of a shelter. So, these kinds of aspects should be considered by ethnographers in their studies, because without considering the migrants, without considering the people who are having trouble in living their lives peacefully because of cultural clashes, are the actual, the real life happenings. And if the ethnographer just keep on studying about the culture and tradition of a community without giving emphasis of what kind of a challenges that community is facing in its day-to-day life, what kind of a challenges that community is facing in sustaining itself, whether uh, people from that community, whether mothers and children from that community are residing inside detention camps. If these kinds of aspects do not come out in an ethnographic study, then that ethnographic study cannot be termed as a complete study. We need to focus on the ground level. We need to study what is happening, why it is happening. We need to go for advocacy ethnography, because ethnographers' work does not stop in just researching in the field and bringing the findings and throwing it and taking her or his salary. It's much more than that. An ethnographer has to be very, very socially conscious human being. An ethnographer has to advocate for the rights of the people, for the rights of the indigenous people, because they are fighting in their day-to-day life for their forests, for their land, for their rivers. They are fighting against big dams. They are fighting against cutting of trees on the mountains. They are fighting against different kinds of government policies. So the ethnographers have a social responsibility and have an intellectual responsibility also to understand, to make a proper ethnographic profile, so that it can advocate about the rights, not only about the rights of the ethnic community or the community in concern, but also that ethnographic profiling has to go to the government authority, has to go to the United States organization, has to go to the table of G20, so that the leaders of the world can understand the grassroots levels problem, so that designing of projects or policy making can be done keeping in view the ethnographic profile of communities which are residing in different corners of the world. So I think if we can take some questions from you, that will be fine. It's almost 11:40. So I thank you formally for listening to my presentation, and I would like to know how was it, and if anybody has any query, please feel free to come forward. If you have any suggestion for my improvement, then also you can come forward. And I would be very happy if someone communicates from the other side also, because for the last 1 hour and a few more minutes I have been speaking all alone. So that was all about my presentation. If someone wants to talk, then you are welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Participants may ask questions or they can put their question in the chat box.
If I can talk to any participant, then I will feel very happy. If somebody can switch on their video, then I can look into their faces. I was just speaking blindly without seeing who is listening to me, and if you got to know anything new from me, then it would be a pleasure for me actually. Uh,
Thank you
Somebody
so
has.
much, ma'am, for your insightful session. You have beautifully described about origin of anthropology and ethnography and salvage ethnography. You also give us a glimpse of beautiful tradition of Rabha community and talk about different documentation in ethnography. And you also mention about equation study and pigeon study also. So we have learned a lot about ethnographic study. So you also talked about how to study national culture at a distance and beautifully describe about ethnomusicology, which is the study of music from the culture and social aspects of people. You have also give us insight in globalization and multi-sided ethnography and discuss about ethnography and telecommunication and also different areas of ethnography like art, AI, in artificial intelligence, and ethnography. So thank you so much, ma'am. Yeah,
Uh, okay. Thank you so much for having me here. And I have a few messages. Thank you, participants. Uh, Indrajit Soikia has written very much impressive. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Rukmini Bordoloi. She has written very interesting.
hmm?
Some other messages also. Thank you, Dr. Diganta Kolita.
Yeah.
Uh,
So we have a question, ma'am.
yes, yes.
Yeah. So Dulen
I
Hazarika
Dulan
asked that
Hazarika, Dulan
COVID.
Hazarika, he's one of my students actually.
Yeah.
He has asked,
Uh, he
do you think
he
COVID
has
has
written
given
that COVID-19 has given a new meaning to digital ethnography.
Okay, thank
And
you, Dulan Hazarika, for your question. Yes, I do think that COVID-19 has given a new meaning to digital ethnography, because COVID-19 taught us to keep ourselves locked inside our homes. So we were far away from our as usual society. We are far away from our friends and family. Some of the people in many parts of the world, they had to stay all alone during the entire period of COVID. So what happened? The only platform through which these people could interact, or even we people could interact the with our friends and family, was the social media platform or the digital platforms. So what happened during those times, I hope all of you remember that many kinds of things were happening digitally. In fact, Bihu, the annual spring festival of Assamese community, was also being celebrated through the digital mode. People were making larus and pithas and displaying pictures. People were playing instruments and dancing bihu and singing bihu and getting decked up for bihu celebration. But it was everything inside the living room. And people were, they concentrated on themselves. They practiced their hobbies. They practiced many things which they could not practice throughout their life. They had ample time to do that. And some people, they also came up with the idea of taking their practices or taking their uh, the things which they produce to a market. The digital platform gave them a market for buyers and sellers. So in this way, I do believe that COVID-19 gave a new meaning to digital ethnography. And in fact, a few months back, I did a study about uh, the connection between material culture and the digital platforms. Because in Assam, in particular, we have seen that there are many platforms which are selling Assamese traditional dress, that is Meghna Choudhury, Assamese traditional jewelry, uh, some other forms of handloom and handicrafts through the medium of uh, through digital media. People are also coming up with selling pickles and jams and jellies and dolls and bed sheets and whatnot. So if COVID-19 would not have happened, I don't think that this kind of a digital market would have bloomed so quickly in India. So uh, COVID-19 has certainly brought about changes into digital ethnography. Uh, I hope you could connect with me, Dulen.
Thank you so much, ma'am. You have beautifully described about how digital world and ethnography become m- much more interrelated during the time of COVID-19.
So some other people have also sent their messages. I would like to thank all of you. Hemen Chandra Kolita, Raju Regon, Indreshwar Pegu, Sharmili Terampi, Ujjal Das, Dibbojyoti Kumbang, Gayatri Bhorali, Rukmini Bordloi, Bhanu Hazarika, Meena Kakoti, Barsha Das, Shashwati Nath, Juri Deka, Moni Kumar Pegu, Leela Das, Riba Sin, Munmi Gogoi, Dulen Hazarika, Somnath Pati, Mitali Kaur. Thank you. I was not expecting so much messages, but it felt great actually. It felt great interacting with you all, and it was a great session for me.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for this beautiful and enlightened.
Thank you,
Hello.
Ba. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. So, thank you, ma'am, once again.
Uh, yeah, I
Okay.
think we have 10 more minutes.
Yeah.
Actually, it was an enriching experience for me because, in fact, when I was asked by Dr. Rima Rabha to prepare something on special topics of ethnography, the first reaction was how could I prepare such a topic which is as big as an ocean. So I was going through the presentation of the my my fellow presenters during the last few days, and I saw that the topics were very concretely made, and they were well defined. But in my case, it was not that well defined, so I could take an ocean or I could take a small whale. So, in fact, I had a challenging journey uh, for the last few days in preparing for this presentation. I must thank Dr. Rima for giving me this topic, because I had to go through many resources, many books, and innumerable sources to cut down to a few relevant topics which I thought that those will be helpful for the participants. So it was an enriching experience for me. It was a learning experience for me. In fact, I gained much knowledge and much understanding of ethnography from this session. So I must thank you for
Thank you,
making
Ba.
me
Thank
a
you.
student once again.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And it is a very nice and informative session. And we gathered a knowledge about ethnography, its area, and different aspects. So once again, thank you so much. So,
So we can wonder.
we can wind up the session. Thank you. Thank you,
Yes.
everyone.